Good day, everyone. Composer99 here, and welcome back to Axis Empire's Total Krieg. We're starting the summer 1944 season. This would be about the equivalent of summer 1942 in the sort of historic progression of the conflict. So we're looking at the second major German summer offensive. As you can see, it's quite a bit further back than would have been expected from historical case. That's thanks to having to clear the Soviet fort line. On the plus side, though, the Soviet counteroffensive was quite a bit more limited compared to historical, and the Soviets cannot expect the strong tank armies that would help drive them to victory in the mid part of total war. They are eventually going to get their guards tank armies, the best ones. Eventually, that's the wrong tray here. I want the unit tray here with their cards 29. No, not even then. Cards 30 and 32. So eventually, but they are missing out on a bunch of slightly better tank steps in between their basic ones and those guards tank armies. That would normally be helping them right about now, either helping keep the Germans honest or start striking back at them, especially once the summer has passed. At any rate, we'll see how well the Germans can do. Their main objective is to reach Rostov and Sevastopol. Sevastopol is extremely well defended, so I'm not terribly optimistic. Rostov, on the other hand, could potentially fall because the Germans can, once they've got Dnepropetrovsk, there's, just a big wide gap, and there aren't a whole lot of Russian reinforcements coming. As we'll soon see, their reinforcements get staggered through the turn. So a lot's going to depend on how much progress the Germans can make. They do have a few advantages. They have lots of air forces against the Soviets, one. And the Soviets aren't getting their air force back until after the summer's over. The Germans can also expect more blitz markers in the winter, so if they have weakened the defenses around Sevastopol enough, they may still get a crack at it, even if they're on the defensive strategically by then, which they will be. One big X factor that the Axis are looking at is the disposition of Cairo. Now that the British have emerged from the East Africa box and have been attacking, their initial round of attacks went well, although they were quite costly with lots of British tank steps getting destroyed. But they have sort of opened up 3 hexes on Cairo with the possibility of maybe even advancing and making spoiler attacks on the German HQ, or Axis multinational HQ, in Port Said. So there is going to have to be a significant German investment into defending down here, in addition to their investment on the Eastern Front. The good news is they're covered for partisans thanks to their minor country allies, although they need to do something about that swamp hex region right here, which they'll be able to do once they've cleared out this fort. With that little summary out of the way, let's get on with our summer offensive. We're going to discard these cards, and we're going to reveal the new Axis current card, Case Blue. We meet the selection requirements, since the Axis previous card was card 32 Spear Pointed Minister, and therefore not a 2+ Blitzmarker card. During the option card segment, the Germans are going to add some units to the delay box, including their first logistics marker and a couple of SS Panzer steps. And then they have some replacements after I pick a pending card. Let's go ahead and pick the pending card. We already know we're going to pick production directive jet fighters. So we have a couple of options we could pick. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about why I am picking production directive jet fighters as opposed to something else. First of all, I can't pick any of our big Blitzmarker cards for the autumn because they all have an Axis current card is not 2 plus Blitzmarker requirement. I could play Nation Rise Up, but I don't want to. I want to have the option of playing either that or Operation Citadel next summer. I haven't made up my mind which I'm going to play, but I want that option. Wacht am Rhein requires the play of V weapons, which in turn requires the play of materiel shortages, which we don't really want to play right now. It's a little early. Material shortages is basically the 1944 collapse of the German war economy combined with the bomb plot. So we're not in any great rush to play that card. We can't play National Redoubt since the VP marker is not Allied Crusade. We could conceivably play Axis Partnership. We could play Military Conspiracy, although we don't want to because that's going to put a military takeover in in the conditional in the strategic warfare box, which I'm not sure we want to do yet. Total war production would be okay, and it would get a couple of extra steps, and we have a couple of other production directives. We're going to play production directive jet fighters here, largely on account of the fact that we're going to get more cracks at the production success jet fighters later when we play the V weapons card. So one problem we do have with all of our production directive cards is when you're playing them at this point in the game, you're not as likely to get the production success results. Let's zoom in a bit and look at all of them here. You can see they all have production success sort of on the lower end of the table, right? The top end result is never a production success, and the bottom end one or two always are. So when you're rolling with like a +1 political die roll modifier, it's actually not very good. And that's what we're doing. The problem that we're facing is by the time we get to the point where we're not rolling with a +1 die roll modifier, it might be too late for those units to come into play. Here's what I mean. Next year, starting next spring season, there will be a -2 political DRM. That could very well mean we're even Steven on political die roll modifiers if we're still in the 2VP spot on the victory point track. But supposing we actually do take Rostov and Sevastopol, we could end up in the 3VP track, the 3VP box, excuse me. And so then we'd still have a net +1 political die roll modifier. So it's certainly possible that waiting isn't going to help very much. Of course, the other issue we have is what else would we play? Probably just Total War Production. And Total War Production is good, but it's just a tank step. And a couple extra infantry, which isn't nothing, but a tank step and a couple of extra infantry over production directive jet fighters. What we're looking at, though, is if we get a little bit lucky, we could get one, maybe two of these production success results. So right now we have a 1 in 3 chance of getting production success jet fighters, which isn't great. But every other result is roll in the directive table, which is a mixed bag, and we'll get to that in a moment. Production success jet fighters, there are two results. So the first time you roll a production success jet fighter, we're going to get this interceptor unit, which is obviously good, right? We certainly want more interceptors. That's our jet fighter unit there. It will be very handy to get that early with Allied bombers soon going to arrive on the board. Our second success, if we get it, is jet fighter production. And that's extremely valuable. That marker goes into the strategic warfare box, and it's a permanent +1 die roll modifier on allied air unit delay rolls for both allied factions. So that's obviously extremely valuable for us, which is why we are keeping that card, or why we're playing that card, as opposed to any of our other production directives that we could play. And to be honest, the earlier these units are on the board, the more impactful, or markers, units and markers I should say, the earlier the units and markers are on the board, the more impactful they'll be. If we miss out on any of them, and it's reasonably likely that we will, since it's only a 1 in 3 chance of picking one up, we get a second kick at the can when we play V-weapons. And we're going to have to decide whether we want to play V-weapons in summer, I guess it'd be summer 1946, as opposed to summer 1945 or 44. But summer 1946, or whether we want to play Wacht am Rhein in the summer. At any rate, when you roll on the directive table, so here we're going to look at the directive table. As I say, it is a bit of a mixed bag. Unfortunately, we can't zoom in on it, but let's have a look here. We're not going to be able to get Volkssturm with our die rolls because of the die roll modifier, which is too bad, but nothing doing. That lets us put an infantry step on the board, I believe specifically one of the 022 VG infantry steps. But that's okay, we don't really need them right now. And we'll get chances to roll on the directive table later. We do have a chance of getting failure command axis, which sucks, but it shouldn't be too bad during the autumn, especially this autumn, before the Allied buildup has further proceeded. It's a particularly unfortunate result to get in a year or so down the line, obviously, when the Allies are that much more built up. Special weapon success, that's what we're going to be looking for later when we play future cards that allow us to roll in the directive table, because that's going to allow us to play the results of a previously played production directive card. So in future seasons, when we play future production directive cards or the V-weapons cards, and we're allowed to roll on the directive table, in the event we roll special weapon success, we would then be able to pick up any jet fighter counters or markers that we haven't picked up when we played this card in the autumn season, or potentially any of these other counters or markers if we get to playing them. Ally support resistance is certainly subpar, not as bad as failure command, but it's not great. I won't go through all the different possible results. Suffice to say, it can start getting nasty. In particular, I think the Allies are going to want to start building up partisan bases, although maybe not because there's nowhere to put them in particular. What they might actually do is blow up Italian steppes in Egypt, which would be very unfortunate, especially if they get consecutive results. So we're going to hope that doesn't happen. Mandate offensive, we already saw last season. That is not great. What we might try to do is have the ability to launch a mandated offensive in the autumn if it comes up. Neutrals pressured, of course, is okay. That's going to let us maybe remove some of these Allied influence markers on the map. Or maybe even pick up the Vichy fleet. I think that might be an option. Let's have a look at that quickly. Yeah, Vichy fleet activated. If Vichy is a neutral minor country and the French surface fleet unit has not already been removed from the game, select that unit and place it in the delay box. When this counter is removed from the turn track, it is placed in the Axis force pool. That's Vichy fleet activated for neutrals pressure. So that would be a way for us to get the Vichy fleet on side. Although it might not last for long, depending on how things work with French liberation, which is going to come up soon when the Western faction plays Operation Torch. So it may not be that valuable, but it will be valuable for removing Allied influence markers from neutral countries. So that's not too bad. And we're actually a little bit more likely to get neutrals pressured right now. So that's an okay result now while we're rolling on the directive table with a positive political die roll modifier. Later on, we might be rolling with no modifier or even a negative modifier. And we're more likely to get Volkssturm, so that's all right. Obviously, any subsequent roll in the directive table after the play of production directive jet fighters is going to be hoping to get production success, assuming we're not lucky and get both of these right away. So we are hoping to get both of those in the autumn. That would be a big help. You can see that the production directive cards we have selected, the KM surface fleet probably isn't going to be super valuable by the end game, but all of the markers are going to be helpful in offsetting the Western faction support unit advantage. And jet fighters in particular is great because it's going to affect the main thing that the Soviets are rolling delay rolls on, which is their air units. So that's what we're aiming for here. With all that out of the way, let's pick production directive jet fighters as our pending card. Interestingly, if we play Operation Citadel in the summer, we're going to remove yet another production directive. So we're not going to have very many Wunderwaffen by the end of the war. If we play Nation Rise Up as our card 35B, we might get to play both of our remaining production directive cards. We'll have to see how that goes. As I say, we're going to wait a bit and see what we want to do with that. That will do for now. The other option we might have is playing Axis Partnership. That also, you can see, lets us roll in the directive table. And in this case, it's okay if we're rolling it with a die roll modifier because at least we're not getting mismanagement, no result. And what we'd be hoping for there is for Italy to not be at risk of getting knocked out of the war, because that's going to put all these extra Italian partnership markers on the map. And if we roll well on the political event, we'll get an Air Force and maybe even an expanded Italian war economy marker, which may or may not come in very handy. As you can see, we've run out of Italians to build. But once they start taking some losses here with this fighting, that might be more of an issue. And especially once there's a risk of an invasion. So the more Italian steps we get, the better. That will also get us, especially if we get the expanded war economy, we'll have this Italian paratrooper unit, which is kind of neat, and an Italian HQ, and of course, an Italian tank step. But most especially an Italian Air Force, which will be extremely valuable if we can get it. Unfortunately, the Air Force and war economy markers are not guaranteed. They are provisional on the outcome of political event. So it's kind of a live by the political die roll, die by the political die roll situation there. All right, that's enough talk about pending and potential future card plays. Let's get on with Case Blue and our replacements segment. So now that we have taken some losses with Italy, we have an Italian unit we can put on the board, and we're certainly going to play it. We have a Greek unit that we're going to play. We do have this Finnish ski unit we can play, but we're not in any great rush to do so. It's not really doing anything for us. We could send it maybe to the main front just as an extra loss taker on defense because it has no offensive factors. It can't attack. Because the Soviets haven't thrown units up north, we could maybe instead try and mess around with their northern Lend-Lease route. I'm not sure that we can do that this year or this summer because we place the unit in Helsinki and then move it towards Murmansk and Archangel, and the Soviets will be able to respond with their replacements. So, as I say, not super valuable. Certainly not as valuable as the Greeks. We're hoping to rebuild the Greek army, which, as you might recall, got hammered with minor country politics quite a while ago, sort of right around the start of Total War, I want to say. I think slightly before it started. And then, oh no, it was after it started. That's how minor country politics works in Total War. Right, is they just take step losses. So they got hammered by that, and they're rebuilding their army, and then that 012 reserve unit is going to eventually head down to Libya to cover for the Italians there, so that the Italians don't have to be there anymore. That is our minor country steps. Let's look at what we're getting with Germany. We have 6 Panzer and 12 infantry steps. So we're definitely going to build the Fallschirmjägers here. Where are we going to send them is the big question. We're going to have to do a bit of careful thinking about our offensives in the south here. We definitely have to clear this hex, but then it's the big question of whether we're trying to attack Dnepropetrovsk when they have HQ support, or maybe we push forward and launch a spoiler attack on the HQ at the same time as we attack here, and then maybe during regular combat we can get to Dnepropetrovsk. We're going to have to see. Up in the north, we might want to launch a spoiler attack on Hex 4007 Borisov. It'll be a little tough, despite the weaker defense factors of the shock armies because of the HQ backup. That's going to be 10 factors defending, which is still better than 12. We're going to be able to get 16, 17, 27 factors. Attacking, we'll need a few more factors, so we'll be throwing in some, definitely throwing in some Panzer steps from our replacement pool, that's for sure, in order to fill out our, get the 3-to-1 attack and have some loss-taking capacity. 3-to-1 would stay at 3-to-1 with the offsetting HQ shifts. 4-to-1 with Panzers. 6-1 with aircraft. So potentially 9-to-1 if we throw in the Fallschirmjäger here as opposed to somewhere else. Although 6-1 is probably okay when we have 1-step Panzer steps to take losses. Anyway, we're certainly thinking about it. Let's see here. So 6 Panzer, 12 infantry steps. Do we need any infantry steps in France and Norway? And the answer is no. It's now looking likely that the Western faction is abandoning an assault on Norway because they're going to need to support their push in Egypt. So that's looking fine. We're not going to siphon units away from Norway because who knows, they might get frisky if we do. France is okay right now, although come the autumn season, we're going to need some extra steps in preparation to occupy southern France once Vichy is activated by Operation Torch, which is likely to happen in the winter, but it could be the autumn season. We definitely need more Germans in Egypt. We would like to have another multi-step infantry unit. It would be great if we could push 8th Army out of Hex 1211. We could maybe get an attack down there, although it's kind of spreading ourselves a bit thin, because then we'd be committing to using pretty much all of our air forces this turn. and maybe in a way that's not very efficient. We could use an air force, two air forces down here. It might still be worth it just to stymie the Western faction. If we kind of lock them, see if we have a multi-step unit in this hex, 1211, a multi-step German unit and a little Italian backup, then all of a sudden we have this really solid front. And maybe the British can't make any progress along here. That would really be good for us. The longer we waste Western faction time fighting around Egypt, the less time and units they have for fighting in Italy, which means we need less commitment to effectively defend it. Especially before they knock Italy out of the war with Avalanche, and we can only have one-step German units there. The problem we could face is that we might eventually have to have our multinational Axis units in Egypt break down in order to get shuttled back to Italy, or to have the steppes shuttled back to Italy so we can reform the units there in order to defend Sicily from attack. What we want to avoid is a situation where we're not prepared for an invasion of Sicily. If it's just those Italians, they're not going to be an adequate defense. So we definitely need some Germans in Sicily. Not right away. The British can't do it right now. They don't have the land units. But certainly once the Americans are in play, and once they have multi-step units. So I don't think we need Germans to go to Italy this season. We're going to need, I think, at least 2 German steppes. Because we need 1 to go round out Med, and we need more to defend along here. Unfortunately, we might have to have multi-step units all the way up to Alexandria, just to keep the Western faction honest. Although maybe not. I mean, what are they going to do? If they stretch to El Alamein, they don't really have a lot of units themselves, so we might not be too worried about that. We just want to avoid the situation where we had the Western faction attacking the small units with their fully stacked armies. So we might actually build those units up into the multi-step army to defend here before we stack up another unit, another German step in port side. At any rate, we need at least 2 more German steps in Egypt. So let's send 3 for now. We'll probably want more as the time goes by, but let's spread them out because we do want to mostly focus on the Eastern Front. So 1, 2, 3. And on this front, we're looking for 4, 5, 6. I think we want to fill out Breslau, Posen, and Berlin with Panzer steppes and the paratroopers, because we actually do want Panzer steppes to reach the front if they're going to attack. So we need some Panzers in Posen. Half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. It's going to take them that far just to get to Minsk. 1, 2. We might swap out the Hungarians because this Hungarian one-step unit is just as good at attacking as that Hungarian unit. And it's also one step, so we can kind of fiddle around with stacking a little better, possibly. Maybe. 2, half 3, 4 doesn't get us where we want. Half 1, half 2, half 3, half, and then they're stuck. So we could be looking at a little bit of an issue with how units are stacked up. for this attack. It's not going to be any better attacking that hex, though, with only 2 hexes attacking. And that hex is much better defensively, so even if we can get sweep around all the way there, the problem is we can't do it with very fast units. Half 1, half 2, half 3. That's only 3 offensive factors. That's not great. One, two, three, and it's also leaving a lot of units out of position around Minsk. The goal with attacking this hex is to sort of turn the Soviet flank and force them to back off, basically for the rest of the summer. The Fallschirmjägers aren't likely to take part in any attacks this turn, so unless we commit them to this hex, which I don't think we're going to do. So let's leave them there, that's fine. We have 1 more Panzer. We need 3 more Panzers, which we'll put here. That's 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12 infantry. What's our 12th infantry going to be? I guess we could put the fast cavalry down somewhere in order to build up a unit more quickly. Half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. That's not going to matter because it'll be able to get to Riga no matter what its speed, as long as it's not one of these slow Volkssturms. So we'll just do that. That's fine. All right, so that is it for German replacements. As you can see, it's a little tricky with managing replacements with our situation here. I do wonder, as you know, we've got Festung Europa planned. I do wonder, given how stymied the Western faction could be, if we'd stymied the Western faction by holding this hex and we had that line there, maybe we could get away with playing SS Europa and getting all the extra steps, because we could probably kind of focus more on fighting the Soviets. As it is, though, I think the safe play is still Festung Europa. The only downside is we're not going to be able to play those Festung forts in Italy, at least not until Italy gets subject to Operation Avalanche, and there's a no occupation marker in it. But, you know, those Festung Europa forts are going to be very helpful in Norway to hold our objectives. They're going to be very helpful in France. We might end up also building a line of them. You know, once some of our beach defenses fall, we might build a line of them along here to stymie the Western faction advance into Germany. And we're going to try and use them to build key forts in key places to slow down the Soviets. You know, not right away when we play the card, but hopefully by the time they're playing the Rumyantsev offensive. Anyway, let's carry on. That's the seasonal phase for the Axis. It's now their support segment. Yeah, return to base. This unit has to return to base. Unfortunately, if we play the supply convoy, we won't be able to shuttle units over, but that's not actually a problem because we don't have any Germans to shuttle over yet anyway. We're not getting them until next turn. By which point we'll also have our scratch convoy back, so we'll be able to play both convoys next turn in order to keep supply and shuttle units. So that's fine. Let's just put that on its supply side. Do we want to play the subfleet? Probably not, although now I think about it, that would probably force the British into an uncomfortable position where they have to either intercept the subfleet or potentially lose out on contesting our Air Force placement. Well, they're not going to do that. They have their fleets, but the value of using the interceptor versus the subfleet is rolling the regular delay roll versus naval delay roll. So if the Allies are using one of these fleets to contest subfleet placement, they're losing out on that advantage. We're going to go ahead and place the subfleet. Can I just do that with a key shortcut? I can. And the Western faction, I don't think they want to let that slide because they're going to be playing their card 20. And if they're playing 20A, they're getting those units in the delay box. So they have a lot of delay rolls. So they better contest it. And I think the smart play is to use a surface fleet. They don't have a beachhead they want to place. So I think that's okay. They don't want to blockade anywhere necessarily. It wouldn't be a bad idea to blockade the Eastern Mediterranean, but they currently can't. They don't have any naval base on that sea zone. And there's no great spot to put a beachhead either, right? They wouldn't be in a great position to attack Kanya. They could put a beachhead to walk into Tobruk, and that would be pretty good. Although then they're, committing to having a convoy pretty much on perpetual supply convoy duty in the Central Med, which I'm not sure that they want, although they might be okay with that. They might be okay with that now that they're sort of running out of units in Great Britain to send to North Africa. Anyway, they're going to go ahead and contest the placement of the... Oh, they don't have a strategic warfare box. So they're going to go ahead and contest the placement. Both of those units are going to the naval delay box. Yeah, they don't want to have a axis delay roll modifier while they're getting all their cool new toys. And then I think the Germans aren't going to worry about fighting the British in the air in North Africa. They might leave a unit defensively. Well, they don't have to worry about that because the British don't have... Oh, they do have the CV fleet that they could place offensively. But that's all they have. So if they just hold up one unit, they'll be okay. Let's get our Axis Blitz markers in the force pool so we have them ready to go. Support unit. We're going to go ahead and place an Air Force in. There. And we're going to put it there because that's going to maximize defensive capacity along the line, as well as, of course, making sure we can attack that hex. The Soviets will contest that placement. So now the Soviets could very well be completely bereft of air cover during the summer. Germans will place another Air Force. And then I think they're going to want to place an Air Force in this hex just to make sure they have it. Down pat. So they're definitely hoping for some low delay rolls on the Air Force. They do want to be thinking about where they want to put that logistics marker. Under the circumstances, Kiev is not bad, although it's maybe a little too far forward, right? We want to always have pretty much a full unit there, which makes it a little hard to make it a reinforcement location. Odessa would be a pretty good spot, though, under the circumstances. So that's something to think about. We need to keep a German step there for later. So one of those German infantry steps is just going to be sitting in there for a little bit. All right. That is it for support unit placement. We have some blitz markers to place. Blitz marker goes here. Blitz marker goes here. We're going to place a blitz marker here, although I don't know that we're going to get anything out of it. The Germans have 5 factors in this hex. So if we were able to get some panzers, if we could, unfortunately we can't. Oh no, we could if we can stack units up appropriately, we could get both of those panzer, both full stack panzers, and have 16 attacking 5, which would be 3-to-1 becomes 2-to-1 with the HQ, becomes 3-to-1 with the panzer. That's not particularly great, but we're kind of trading German steps for Russian HQ steps, so that would be okay. I would happily trade 2 panzer steps to destroy that HQ and sort of not only would it unhinge the line in a way, but it would also force the Soviets to either bring their other HQ forward to defend Dnipropetrovsk, or they would not have an HQ defending Dnipropetrovsk, right? They don't have any HQs in their force pool that they're permitted to build because they don't have minor country steps to use. And then if that HQ comes forward, then probably so are those units, in which case maybe we're going to be fighting all these Red Army units in the clear terrain instead of, having to fight them in the swamp. So I think that might be worthwhile. We're going to look during operational movement to see how we can make that work for us. In the meantime, we have organization. I don't think we have any organization on the Eastern Front. But we do have organization down here. Let's put 19th Army down. All right. That brings us to operational movement. Let's do the easy stuff first, I guess. This unit's going to go. Actually, this unit goes there because that's going to be easier for stacking. Correction. We don't have to keep Greeks in Salonika because there's no worries about partisans because Greece is our ally. So that unit goes here for easier build-up. And then these Germans are going half, 1, half, 2, half, 3. They're going to head down to Salonika. That unit goes here. I think we can afford to... no, if we abandon Alexandria, the British could walk in because of their ability to use ground units to ignore Zox. Now, admittedly, they would be extremely stretched out, but they could do it. I think they would be very unwise if they did, though. And they could be attacking with 6, 8, 12 factors against 5 right now, which would be 2-to-1. Becomes 3-to-2. Becomes... well, no, they could actually have the HQ if they bring that forward. So that would be 6, 8, 12, 14, attacking 5. That's still 2 to 1. Becomes 3 to 2, becomes 2 to 1. Becomes 3 to 1 if they place... no, it would just be 2 to 1 attack because they don't have a blitz marker in their upcoming card. So it would be a very poor attack. So I think we can leave it like that. I mean, all right. To be honest, we don't know what the Western faction card is, strictly speaking. I mean, we do, but we're pretending we don't. But we have to be imagining that they're going to play their card 20, right? They need to play it at some point. Every Blitzmarker card that the Western faction can play now has American steps on it. So if they're playing a card without playing card 20, they're now leaving American steps off the table. And I definitely do not think they want to do that. So we're pretty confident there are no Western faction Blitzmarker cards at the moment, which means they have a really bad attack, which means we don't need to abandon Alexandria. What else are we doing? This Italian unit cannot go to Salonika. It does not cooperate with the Greeks, as it were, so they'll just go over here. And at some point, when we get a chance, we'll schlep them over from through the central Mediterranean, not the Adriatic. Because they'll eventually want to build up with that step, and then when we get that unit back, we'll rebuild it and send it to probably Tripoli. All right, that's most of the easy moves. We're already 50 minutes in here. Now, mind you, that's before I do a little bit of trimming, possibly, but it's been a long video already. We haven't even got to the main action. So now, what kind of attack can we get on this hex if we don't have these panzers participating? So if we take 16 factors out, we have 5, 11, 16, 22, 28, 34, 35, 45, 46, 50 factors attacking 7. That's easily more than enough. We only need 42 factors, so that's good because one of these units is really going to need to get up here to allow the big panzers to get across the river. So if one of those 6-factor infantry goes, that's going to leave us with 11, 17, 22, 27, 37, 38, 44 factors. That's going to be 6 to 1. There's a 1-column shift for the fort, and then we have an HQ armor. We actually have too many column shifts. We don't need the Air Force there. So you know what? We're gonna mulligan that because we haven't rolled dice. Oh, that's not what I want to do. I want to send that back to force pool. We're gonna mulligan that. We don't need that there. That is great. That means we're going to have more HQs later against the hopefully completely prostrate Soviets. So sometimes it's a good idea to actually math out attacks before you start committing support units. So you don't have to do that kind of thing. Right, so 6 to 1 ends up in the 9 to 1. That's good. Are we going to still end up being in the right column with this attack? We're going to have 12, 22, 26. We need to get to 30 factors. 27, half 1, half 2, 28. I think we can just do it if that unit of Warsaw advances and one of these infantry in the back takes its place. So I think we're okay. I think we're going to be able to get to do everything we want to do here. So let's get on this. That unit advances there. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, which they're able to do because this unit is nullifying the Soviet Zoks. That unit has to stop. 1, 2, 3. Now, in theory, they could keep moving, but they're not going to. They want to stay nice and compact and tough. I guess we could instead place an Air Force here, which would probably prevent a Soviet counterattack, which the Soviets could contemplate because they'd have a bunch of units and the HQ if it comes forward. Those units would not be able to participate. They're too slow, and there's no way to get into Nepopetrovsk to attack. But a chance to kill a few German panzer steps might be too much to pass up. They do have these units that can take part. Anyway, that's fine. I think killing the Soviet HQ is going to be worth a few losses, especially with all of our panzer replacements coming down the pipe. So now that unit is going to go here. This unit will go there. So it's sort of not as cut off by the river here. That unit will go here. That unit will go here. This unit will go there. That unit will go there. Or maybe we'll have that unit there and this unit there. All right, that's fine. Down the road, we might want this unit and this unit to link up and combine, so we'll be able to throw down one more Hungarian step, which will then end up going back here. It'd be nice to have that on its two-step side eventually. All right, so we're looking good here, right? We have our 11, 23, 33, 35, 40, 44. Yeah, we have our 16 to 5. So the big question is if we can still make this happen. Well, that's actually 3 movement points. That's 2 movement points, but it has to stop. It could go back into Minsk because of the Zok nullifying, but it's not going to. This unit will go there. We're not terribly worried about an attack across a river into bad terrain. That unit can go here. This unit can go here. Half, 1, half, 2, half. That's just as good defensively as a multi-step unit, so that's fine. So now we want half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. Okay, that goes there. Half 1, half 2, 3. That's got us 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14, 16, 28. So we need one more panzer step, and there's enough room for it to go into Minsk. So half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. There is our 30 factors for our 3-to-1 attack. Looking good. All right, now where are we sending all these other units? So this unit is going to go half 1, half. No, one of these units is actually going to have to go to Warsaw. This unit's going to go half 1, half 2, half 3. We want it to get into Riga. Eventually, we're going to want to have potentially full stack. If we're sort of sitting on the Minsk line, a sort of Minsk to Kiev line, then we're going to want to fill out Riga. And that's not a bad line. If we're just sort of sitting on defensively, it's probably almost better to be there, because then if we can ever muster up a 3-hex attack, it'll be attacking clear terrain. So that's not the worst. Half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. I'm pretty certain we're going to need this unit in the south. We may even be saving it for an attack to dislodge the defense in Crimea. So now half 1, half 1, half. Do we want to send another unit up towards Riga to pad that out? We need at least one infantry step. I mean, it could be a panzer step, but we'd prefer infantry for obvious reasons. In Odessa, half 1, half 2, half 3, so that we can place the logistics marker once it's available. Let's send this unit, half 1, half 2, half 3. That will head up towards Riga. All right, so now, panzer steps. Maybe we want one spare panzer step in the north, so that we might be able to keep pressing forward in the summer. But we definitely need some replacements in the south, because we're already short panzer steps as it is. And we didn't really get that many, did we? Half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. So half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. And then these are both half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4. Well, that's great. Looking good. Looking good, looking good. All right. What are we doing? Are we doing anything else? I don't think so. So that is it for operational movement. That brings us to blitz combat. Where do we want to start? Let's start with the strongest attack. That is our attack on hex 3209. We already know we're in the 6-1 column, right? 44 factors attacking 7. With 1 defensive shift and 2 offensive shifts thanks to the blitz markers, so we're in the 9-1 column. What was the hex number again? It was 3209. So this combat is probably setting the tone for the turn, so we definitely hope it goes well. A 3. All right, well that is a good start. DR301. Unfortunately, that's not going to clear the hex. If we just done a little bit better last turn, right? If we basically rolled, I mean, there was other results on the table we were in where we would not have done 2 step losses, but you know, if we'd rolled a 4 or 5 last turn, that would have inflicted 2 step losses. It would have been expensive for us losing a Yugoslav, but it would have been okay, and that would have let us clear the hex. Unfortunately, we're not clearing the hex here with only 4 step losses. So on the other hand, because of all the steps, it's not like we'd be exploiting after a successful blitz combat even if we did clear the hex, so I guess it doesn't really matter. It's not like we're going to be launching a surprise attack on Dnepropetrovsk anyway. So 1, 2, 3, 4 step losses, and no German losses. So that's good, and then we're going to have a really good attack. Another 9-1 attack later. So now all these other attacks are just a little bit more sketchy. We have our attack in Donbass on hex 3511. That starts in the 3-1 column. It's going to end up in the 3-1 column, and you know, that's kind of as good as it gets. We have a 50-50 shot of not taking any losses, a 50-50 shot of inflicting 2 step losses, although most of the time we're taking one step loss ourselves when we do it, but that's okay. And only a 1 in 6 chance of only being 1 for 1. So let's go ahead and do that attack. We'll sort of go south to north. It's not our best attack, but because it's an HQ almost completely by itself in that sort of exposed position, I think it's worth it, right? If we just get a little bit lucky, we will break the HQ down and sort of unhinge the Soviet line. So I think that's definitely worthwhile. Let's see how we go. A 5. All right, DR111. So that's one of the results we were looking for. It's costing us a panzer step, but it's costing the Soviets 2 steps. The big problem the Soviets have here is the HQ is automatically participating. They can't not have it participate when it's defending its own hex, so they can't retreat. Any result they get is going to be on the HQ. Now, I suppose they could just take 2 step losses on the HQ, causing it to break down, and then the other units will be able to retreat during a future combat. And that might be better than... I think the defensive odds will be a little better. Defensive factors. It would be 13 factors attacking 2 if we take a step loss on the mech step, and then the other step loss on the HQ. 13 to 2 is 6 to 1 with no change in odds. But if we take 2 step losses on the HQ, we'd have 3 factors defending. It would be 4 to 1 with no column shift either way. So it's really not going to matter, except that if we take the step losses just on the HQ, then there's a chance that some of those other units will survive. So you know what? I think the Soviets, they'll take their DR1 and then their 1 attrition step on the HQ. So they're going to have a better chance of maybe some of those units surviving the follow-up attack. All right, so the Germans got what they wanted for 1 Panzer step, so they're feeling pretty good about that. They might even not bother attacking next time. They probably should, though, maybe because they might kill some more steps. They have in this column, they have a 2/3 chance of killing steps, and again, well, no, and they're only killing 1 step, though, right? That's the best they can do because the Soviets can actually retreat. So they might not. I think, yes, I think the Soviets made the right call here because now they can guarantee that 1 unit is going to survive no matter what. If the Soviets had kept the HQ down, then they would have guaranteed, except if the Germans rolled a 2 on their follow-up combat, they would have pretty much guaranteed a bunch of step losses. I guess if the Germans rolled a 6, that would also be okay for the Soviets. But in most cases, they would have taken 2 step losses, and that, completely lost the hex. So now they're likely to see the mech step survive, where it can come in handy as a sort of defensive clutch unit somewhere else. Maybe to help defend that HQ, which probably is going to have to come forward. Maybe not, though. Maybe the Soviets just let the Germans drive them out of Dnepropetrovsk. Maybe they just do that. Problem is they're still a little short on units, aren't they? Although they're getting a bunch more this turn, so they'll probably be okay. The big problem is they are short on HQ still. Anyway, that combat went okay. It went pretty much as well as we could have expected, so I think the Germans are pretty happy. So that leaves us with this final combat. We have 12, 14, 16, 21, 26, 27, 28, 32 factors. Oh, did I pick up an extra 2 factors? I thought I had exactly 30. I'm going to recount that. That's 12 plus 4 is 16 plus 4 more is 20, 25, 32 factors. Okay, yes, definitely 32 factors attacking 10. We have 8 in the hex plus, sorry, 7 in the hex plus 3 from the HQ. So that's 3 to 1. There's a defensive shift for the HQ. There's an offensive shift for an HQ, an offensive shift for armor, and an offensive shift for air. So they're in the 6181 column. That's hex. I can't see. Hex 4007 Borisov. And that's on the eastern map, so let's add the little E. All right, let's see what happens. A 5. It's not great. We do take a step loss. It's still 3 Soviet losses, though, so it is a pretty significant win. It's a decent enough trade. And basically, the Soviets like none of these losses, really. It's a very significant degradation of their capabilities. They could keep all those units on the board if they flip them all over to their one-step side, but that would be a very serious defensive collapse. This unit pretty much has to stay intact for as long as possible because it has the best defensive factors. So they're just going to have to lose some shock armies. Ooh, I didn't want to do that. We want to flip it over to its one-step side and then return it to the force pool. So 1, 2. I think they want to keep the HQ intact as long as possible, especially now that they've just lost the one in the south. They don't want to start losing too many HQ steps and maybe have this sector collapse as well because they don't have enough HQs. Although it's already looking pretty parlous if the Germans decide they really want to follow up. And that might be exactly the kind of stretching of Soviet reinforcements that the Germans need to really make things happen in the south. If they crack this line up here, you know, they could be sitting in Smolensk, maybe push the Soviets back into the forest line. I don't think they have a serious threat on Moscow, but they do if the Soviets don't do anything about it. So here we're just trying to again force these unpleasant decisions on the Soviets. So, and I think that's going to be a good way to do it. So that is good. That's it for Blitz combat. We've taken our step loss, so now we're moving back into the regular combat segment. What are we going to do? Let's go ahead and just do the same order. We have one factor defending 3209, so we are comfortably in the 9 to 1 column. We're going to leave out the panzers so we don't take a panzer step loss, if there's a step loss. We have offsetting shifts for fort or HQ, so it stays in the 9 to 1 column. 3209. A 6. Well, that's why we said out loud that we were leaving out the panzers. So we do take an infantry step loss, but it can be a Yugoslav, so that's fine. Where are the Yugoslavs? They have a unit all the way in Dubrovnik that they can bring over to combine, which I think they will build out, or they will do because there's no particular threat to Dubrovnik right now. So that's fine. All right, so the Germans take their step loss, and it's DR2 and 1 Soviet step loss. So the Soviets retreat 0 hexes. There are no panzers taking part, so there's no exploitation, which is fine. That's fine. So I'm just flipping that over to its 2-step side for when it goes back in the force pool. It goes to the delay box, and we will advance the HQ. The one thing that would have been nice about getting an exploitation result, if we'd had the panzers take part and rolled better, would have been the ability to roll right up into these hexes here. Right, we could go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you know, that sort of thing. But that's fine. I think that's okay. Certainly, we're not going to have any particular problem attacking Dnepropetrovsk next turn. And unless the Soviets advance the HQ, we can even just dislodge the defenders from the city with our Blitzmarker later. And to be honest, I'm not sure that we advance the HQ. I think we're quite happy sitting here making it very hard for the Germans to get into the Crimea and attack Sevastopol, even if that means losing Rostov. I think that's a worthwhile exchange for the Soviets. So that's going to be it for that. Next up, we have this combat here. There are 13 factors attacking 3. That's the 4-to-1 column with no shifts. I'm not 100% convinced we make that attack because there's a 50-50 shot of taking a loss. Although we could just retreat because we don't have an HQ participating unless we take attrition. So if we roll a 6, we're okay. We just retreat, and then who cares what the Soviets do. We're just kind of in a bit of trouble if we roll a 4 or 5 because we're trading off a German armor step for a Soviet infantry step. Unfortunately, we can inflict 2 losses. So, I think we will actually not attack there because we're not getting a good exchange. It's one thing when we're breaking down a Soviet HQ. It's another thing when we're just maybe picking off an infantry. As for this hex, though, that's a different story. There are now 4, 5, 6, 7 factors defending as against 12, 16, 18, 23, 28, 29, 30 factors. And we said it was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 30 factors attacking 7 is 4-to-1. There's a defensive shift for HQ, an offensive shift for HQ, and an offensive shift for Air Force. So we're once again back in the 8-to-1 column. Versus E407 Borisov. So unless we take step losses on the HQ, it's very likely to clear the hex. The 3. That's DR201. The Soviets committed the HQ, so they must take 3 step losses. And even if they take 2 step losses on the HQ and sort of lose it, they're still taking another step loss because that will have exhausted all their retreat results. So I think they keep the HQ intact and they just take the step losses on these units. No German casualties. They will press forward with, I think we keep a multi-step unit in that hex for now. So they press forward with those. Looking good. And now they are looking like they've got a really strong attack here if the Soviets don't do something. Basically, it's basically like the same situation where they can get a 3-to-1 attack with an Air Force support. So the Soviets definitely have to withdraw. They, I think, paid the price for not retreating earlier or not staying further away earlier. They maybe should have retreated back to a line around Smolensk. Anyway, that is it for regular combat. During the marker segment, we have to remove the blitz markers. I'm glad we did this attack here. That was a good way to get the most out of all of our blitz markers. Even though it cost Panzer Step, it blew up a Soviet HQ, so I think that's going to be pretty valuable. And we have 2 air forces, and it's quite possible they will be unopposed next turn. Feeling pretty good about that. All right, reserve movement. What do we have to do here? Well, let's go ahead and put this unit Actually, let's do that, and then we might move this unit out closer to the end of the season. I don't know that the Allies really get many political events, but I don't want to chance that they get something that lets them muck around. I guess it doesn't really matter because partisan bases only come down during seasonal phases. So we'll just do 1, 2 during reserve movement. 1, and that'll be that. These units are all stuck on the line. Half, 1, half, 2, half, 1, half, 2. Can stay there. Half, 1, half, 2, 3, 4. Half, 1, half, 2, 3, 4. Half, 1, half, 2, half, 3. The Baltics are a conquered country, so they're fast moving. That's the downside of the Soviets not claiming the Baltic states through demand Baltics. Is if they'd done that, then this would be part of the Soviet Union, and therefore the Germans wouldn't have the fast movement. But I think it was worth it with the Romanian and Polish shenanigans. All right, what else have we got here? We can't advance into those two hexes. We can advance there, here. Those units are a bit faster, so we can maybe have them go here. One of them maybe, and then we'll do that. One, two. That unit can advance into Odessa for now. That unit goes there. Half, 1, half, 2, half. Half, 1, half, 2. Half, 1, half, 2, half, 3. Half, 1, half, 2, half, 3, 4. That's it along the eastern front. No movement, I'm sure, in the Mediterranean with the British zones of control. All right, that is the Axis faction turn. I don't think they have any conditional events. Certainly not on the card. So that means play proceeds to the Western faction. The Western faction reveals their current card, Arsenal of Democracy. So that means the United States is in. Remove card 20B. I mean, I know it's in earlier because their posture is war, but you know, they're in now for realsies. Remove card 20B, US Victory Program. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. We can technically also clear out that because this card is no longer possible to play that card. Where are we here? We'll just go ahead and pick our pending card because we know what it is since we're on this tray. Total War is now in effect, so on the off chance that we're playing this card before the Germans have played Barbarossa or Sea Lion because of a global game, that would cause Total War. U.S. Force Pool, we get a whole bunch of U.S. units. Really looking forward to those. So these are the extra victory program units, which we will never see. And instead, all these units go to the delay box. So we're very excited about those delay box rolls, right? There's a fleet, a troop convoy, the Allied US British HQ, and Bomber Command, the bomber is very exciting. That's going to result in a pretty much permanent German commitment of ground units to defend their victory hexes, against the bomber because of a devastation marker possibility, and a permanent, more or less, air unit commitment. So the Germans are hoping the Allies get a long delay roll for the bomber so that they're not having to worry about it over the summer campaign. Last thing they want to do is have to worry about a British bomber while they're trying to fight in Russia. The Western faction, of course, wants the British bombers to arrive right away so that the Germans don't get that chance. That would pose a problem for the Germans because they don't have land units to form air bases. But as we saw, they very quickly had a lot of demand for their land units. I guess they could siphon units out of Norway if they had to. I don't know. They really wouldn't want to siphon units away from the Eastern Front now. So we've already picked our pending card. So now we have replacements. Britain, 1 infantry and 1 armor step. US, 1 infantry and 1 armor step. So we need to move all these Americans somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and put them there. And let's talk a little bit about what we gave up with Victory Program. So as we saw, Victory Program, there were a whole bunch more one-step units. Let's find the card so we can talk about that a bit. Where is it here? Yeah, here we are. So it would have been 6 more infantry steps, albeit 113 ones. Those can, like the British 113 units, flip over into 2-step 233 units. Let's see if we can find that. That should be in here. Western 20. It's like one of these. Flips over. These 113 armor steps don't flip over in anything, just like the other ones don't. But they're just extra armor steps. The other thing, right, they wouldn't have gotten the British bomber. They wouldn't have gotten the troop convoy. What they would have got was the Victory Program marker. And what the Victory Program marker gets are extra American steps every seasonal replacement segment. As unfortunately, as well as positive Darrow modifier for Western delay rolls and for Lend-Lease rolls. I believe it's just for Lend-Lease. I don't think it applies to Soviet delay rolls, but maybe it does. We'll just have a quick gander at that, shall we? When this marker is in the strategic warfare box, the Western faction receives additional US replacements. There's a +1 delay DRM for all Western units. There's a +1 DRM on the Lend-Lease table. So you just watch out. That +1 Soviet sort of indicator is not for the delay roll. It's for Lend-Lease. So Victory Program probably is a card you leave for when France is still in the war. If Germany has gone, say, east first, because then you have all those French ports that you can schlep American units into. And yes, if the U.S. Victory Program marker is in the TK Strategic Warfare box, the Western faction receives 1 U.S. infantry replacement step and 1 U.S. armor replacement step. So it is a whole bunch of extra steps over the course of the war. And if you can just ship them directly into France, that's great. You do have a bit of a problem where you have to use escort convoys because of the 1 troop convoy per sea area. But you could do things like ship them to France or ship them directly into Norway or ship them directly into the Mediterranean. They can go to West Africa. directly from the US Canada box and then into East Africa. So there's things you can do to get around that. At any rate, we picked Arsenal of Democracy because we want the extra support units and we don't want the delay roll to support units because we are doing so much more air naval operations because we don't have France as our, you know, world's largest American aircraft carrier. We have to do it from Britain. So that is Arsenal of Democracy except for replacements. What have we got? We have no British infantry steps to place, and that's because we broke those units down and didn't when we should not have because we couldn't actually evacuate them from those hexes because of the mud. So the British are actually going to be out a step. I mean, they're so short on steps, I don't think it's the end of the world. They will put a step there. And the Americans get one infantry and one armor step. All right, that's Western replacements. What are they actually going to do with their turn? Support segment first. So that goes home. Let's close that. Where's the other convoy? There it is. That goes home. What are we doing to send units home? Do we even bother sending units right now? This is the only unit that could get home. I think that unit actually probably wants to stay in Stavanger so we can kind of keep the Germans honest, because then we can always schlep units back in if they siphon units away for something. And it's, we're not doing anything with it particularly. We don't need it anywhere defensively, anywhere else. We're not on the defensive in Africa. I guess we could be if we overstretched ourselves. We don't need it in Cagliari. I guess having the extra step in Sardinia might be good. We might be looking at wanting to make sure we're able to walk right into Corsica when we play Operation Torch. Although that's not going to help us liberate France. We need to occupy a city in France or in a French dependent in order to do that. So where do we put support units? We put a convoy here. That's going to get us that British armor step. Would it be worth our while to swap out this HQ for the Allied HQ? It would be 2 extra steps on the attack, and because it's American nationality and British nationality, it would mean also being able to send American airplanes to fight here if we need them. And so I think that would be worthwhile. So we'll definitely want to have an American unit, and we can do that without having to use the convoy. So our other convoy will go here. Although, would it be better to send it to the Western Med? This unit's going to go into the East Africa box. That unit's going to go into the East Africa box. For the Western HQ, we do want an armor type step. So if those 2 units both go to the East Africa box, they can go directly to the West Africa box. They can both go directly to the East Africa box without having to use a convoy. So we don't need we'll need the convoy. We can either send a unit back to Britain and then maybe send it around to the box from Norway. Or one turn we send the armor and then one of these infantry steps heads into the Med. like Cagliari or something if we go here. Let's do that. We're going to get rid of that because we don't have a blitz marker right now. Is there any reason at all we'd want to place a beachhead anywhere? I don't think so. We would not have a very good attack in Sicily. There's no point invading anywhere if we can't get into a port right away. There's no point. We can't shuttle a unit into the central med now that we've. I mean, I guess we could change how we place our convoys, but what would be the point? There's not. We'd have to as I said, we'd have to permanently commit to having supply in Tobruk, and it's not helping us outflank the Axis in Egypt. It might help if we want to take Tripoli, because then we can, shuttle units over. I guess we'd probably rather land in Benghazi so that we don't have as far to go. That might be okay. I don't think we have to do that just yet, though. We can wait a bit to do that. But it would be better to do that before the Italians have a chance to reinforce Tripoli. Right? Either we force them to reinforce Tripoli now and they don't get to optimize their unit build-up in Egypt, or they choose to optimize unit build-up in Egypt, maybe at the risk of losing Tripoli because there's only one step there. So that might be worth doing eventually soon anyway. Possibly even next turn once there are no American units that have to get schlepped around. Anyway, that's it for support segment, unless we want to play the CV fleet. There's no point because it's only useful during blitz combat if we flip it over to its CV strike side, and there's not a whole bunch of point blockading the central Mediterranean. So I think that's going to have to do. Where are we here? All right, so that'll be it for that. Let's move on to organization. We might build up one of these units so that we can put some one-step units into Stavanger to schlep over back to Britain, while having a unit we can place as replacements next season. So let's do that. We don't have any more unless we want to do the same thing here, which I don't think we will, just in case we want to make something happen in Benghazi. Operational movement. Both these Americans will head over, right? We're not schlepping them over convoy-wise, so there's no limit on how many we can send across. We're going to send them to the West Africa box. That unit goes to the East Africa box. We'll figure out what we're doing here last. Let's do this first. This unit is going to the West Africa box. Those units will step away from Oslo. Go ahead and shuttle. Actually, we probably, just in case, want to have the ability to reform the London HQ in case the Germans have any surprises. Although, we're going to start sending Americans over to Great Britain. Maybe. To be honest, we're going to probably mostly focus on Americans in French North Africa because the British have so much commitment everywhere else. Except for the British HQ, which I think will form up here because we're not likely to see as many Axis units since they have so much commitment in Egypt and the Eastern Front. That's operational movement in most of our sectors. We forgot a combination here. Let's just take care of that. That unit's going to go there. This unit can go there. That's one. I think that's fine. I don't think the Axis are going to attack. They'll have 6, 7, 8, 16. Well, 17 factors attacking 5 is 3 to 1, although it's going to be offsetting HQ shifts and then 2 to 1 for terrain. So then the Germans would certainly have to commit a blitz marker just to be in a 3 to 1 column, which isn't great. I think the Western faction will quite, I didn't want to push that. The Western faction will quite happily trade off those steps in order to kill panzers, which are much harder to replace under the circumstances. It'll be a little easier once this unit's more built up, though. So they might, well, that unit will be able to help eventually. So let's actually, that's 1, 2, 3. That can go there for now. I don't know that we're going to get an attack off until we have a blitz marker, so we'll have to see how that goes. All right, that is it for Western operational movement. They have no combat during the marker segment. That's going to go back there. And now, reserve movement. This unit is going to go to Cagliari. That unit can shuttle up towards there. That unit can go there. And those units can all go into the East Africa box. And that is it for Western reserve movement. They have no conditional event, so that's going to bring us to the Soviet faction turn. Soviets are definitely a little concerned with the developing situation. They are not as strong, maybe, as they felt themselves to be. They play card 28. Uranus reserves reformed. They don't have to apply Pacific commitment because they are not at war. They have a bunch of units to add to the delay box. So this is going to help. They're getting another shock army, but most importantly, they're getting Guards infantry, which is going to be a real help down the road. The Guards infantry are great all-round units. They're not as good on the attack as shock armies, but they're better than regular infantry. Most importantly, they have 4 defense, so they are great at holding the line. As I say, they're great all-round units. They're the same as a 2-step German infantry army on their 2-step side, so you know they're good. All right, that's these units here. They all go in the delay box. They don't have seasonal replacements, so here they are. Whole bunch of stuff in the Soviet delay box, isn't there? Stavka logistics is probably not going to come in very handy because we have lots of cities for reinforcement locations and not a lot of reason to have a forward deployment. Certainly we're not planning on placing it anytime soon because we're kind of back on our heels again. We have to pick another penning card, which we already know is going to be Red Air Force. Unlike the Germans, who have to roll and get lucky to get their production directive card stuff, the Soviets just play their card and get their new, fresh, new, cool toys. So there you go. They can, you play the Soviet faction. You can play your production directorate Red Air Force card, and I don't know, use your favorite playground taunt towards your Axis opponent, neener, 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 or whatnot. They have no seasonal replacements, so they are going to proceed straight to the support segment. They have no support units to place. They are definitely looking a little flimsy at the moment. I mean, they still have a lot of steps to be sure, but then they're not very good steps yet. So yeah, they are suddenly looking a lot flimsier than they were just a couple turns ago. And they're getting, I mean, 15 steps over the course of the season, which is a lot, but they're going to be losing probably at least 5 every turn over the next couple turns. So they're going to probably end up behind, even with Lend-Lease at the end of the season compared to where they started. No support segment. They do have some organization, although not a whole lot. This unit's going to organize onto its two-step side. That is it. So, operational movement. What are they doing? Let's consider this question last because it's a tough question. Let's start with up here. So this line is looking quite paltry. We have a Soviet HQ by itself. I mean, I know we could reinforce it, but then, we could get outflanked, turn the flank. The Germans could have 3 hexes on there, it could get nasty. It could get nasty. They might even have attacks here and here, depending on how things go, if with the right Air Force placement. So I think the Soviets need to conduct uh, we'll call it a tactical redeployment, aka running for the clappers. Voici Napoléon sauve qui peut, basically. So 1, 2, 1, 2. Go back and sit in our fort line. Just get away. There are no German Zocs, so that can just go there. Actually, maybe we... Okay. 1, 2. That unit can run there. That means they get out of German Zocs, so they're not stuck in Zocs during reserve movement. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. We definitely want to keep that unit out of the front line. Not only is it very poor defensively, but that's 2 infantry steps locked in there. So if it gets removed, it's a really efficient removal by the Germans. That unit can go there. It can't really go any further. I guess it could move up into the forest, but we don't really need a defense up here. Although we do have this HQ here, so maybe that is still a better deployment. I don't think we're concerned about the Germans looping up to attack Luga, but maybe we're starting to be concerned. I still don't think so because they might just, if they're going to press forward here, they're probably pressing forward around Smolensk in the good terrain, right? That hex is still pretty strong. I don't think we're worried about an attack on Luga because even if they take it, what are they going to do? They're not, they wouldn't really be able to spare the resources, I think, for a attack on Leningrad. They certainly couldn't get up to do it over the summer. What else are we doing here? So now we have to get this unit out of dodge. 1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's looking better. And thanks to the rivers and the swamps, it's probably not going to be possible for the Germans to get a strong attack anywhere next turn. They might the following turn. They very well might. But I think we're good for now. So let's leave it at that. We do have some steps coming, although I hate to place steps up here when we have this situation developing in Ukraine and Donbass. So now we have to ask ourselves, do we want this HQ to come forward to support Dnipropetrovsk, or do we want to stay back in Crimea? I think we want to stay back and hold up in Crimea, because our thinking is if we've got a nice strong force in Crimea and we eventually rebuild in the sort of Kharkov, maybe Tula Voronezh line, maybe Voronezh Kharkov line, depending on how things go. It might be hard for the Germans to hold up in Rostov if they can't close the deal in Crimea and take Sevastopol. I I think we just could have maybe too much pressure on the German lines. So I think we're going to hold back and maybe play that long game. Our thinking is the Germans are probably going to maybe, when they attack Dnipropetrovsk, they're probably going to place a blitz marker there so that they can dislodge the Soviets rather than, you know, just fight them to the death. Although they might, you know, they might still do that anyway, encircle the city uh, and leave it at that. So we do have to think about that. That would be a big problem. I mean, it's a big problem either way, right? If we move the HQ up, we probably want to put it into Melitopol, and then we can get it all the way up here and at least support, you know, we can't support these forward positions, but at least we can support Dnipropetrovsk, that hex, and that hex. These units would have to advance, I think, to cover here. The Germans can eventually cross over into those swamps, but not right away because it's a really expensive hex to enter. That's 3 movement points to cross from here into there. So there's nothing that can do that right now. If the HQ moved here, they could maybe attack this hex. Although that's got 14 factors defending, they could get 3, 6, 9, 18, 20, 23, 32, 35 factors attacking 14, which would be still just 2 to 1. Would become 3 to 1 with the friendly HQ would become, it would be just 2 to 1. So there's a 1 in 6 chance of just losing a Russian armor step for no value. Admittedly, we would be trading armor steps for German armor 1/2 the time. That's okay, and then we might get lucky. So, I mean, that would be okay. The problem is, I think it would be worth it for the Germans, because there's no blitz combat, it would be worth it for the Germans if we do that, because then all of our units are just concentrated right there, where it's a lot easier for their fast panzers to kind of create these encirclements, and, you know, then they smash a whole bunch of extra steps, especially that hex here, which I don't think there's any way for the HQ to support. If the HQ goes there, it can get to this hex. It can't get to this hex because of the zone of control. So there's no way for them to support that hex. So if the Germans decide to sort of temporarily loop around north a bit, they could just wipe that hex out of existence, set up a route where it retreats into that hex, and then they all retreat together, and then there's a whole bunch of overstacking, and lots of Russians die. It would be a pretty big disaster, all for maybe killing one German panzer step. We could advance that HQ 1 hex into the swamps, and then just sort of advance into here with the main army, just so we're supporting Dnipropetrovsk. But I feel like then what would happen is the Germans could swamp the north, crush a whole bunch of units, and then swing back south during the third turn of the summer with essentially no Russian units on their back and crush Dnipropetrovsk anyway. One possibility might be to just abandon Dnipropetrovsk. Those units could go to Rostov, or even get into this swamp hex. Although it would be very unfortunate if they go into that swamp hex and then the Germans take this hex and push into Crimea, because then they'd be stuck there, which would really suck. So I think they will, if we're going to retreat, now's the time to do it. This stack is probably okay. I don't see the Germans going up to kill that just because it's, I think, a little too far out of the way. What we will do is we'll move it there, so it's very inconvenient for the Germans to push that far. If we leave Dnipropetrovsk, can the Germans get an attack on that hex? Those units would also have to retreat. I don't think they can. They're just because they weren't able to clear that hex during blitz combat and then, get some exploitation distance. They just don't have, if they had units in those two hexes, I think they could maybe attack here, but I don't think they can do it. So that would be one thing working out for us, is we could sort of blunt the danger of a German attack. If we sit in Dnipropetrovsk, they definitely attack it and kill a bunch of Russian steps. If we leave 1, 2, then that unit can retreat all the way to Rostov during reserve movement, and maybe the Germans don't even have an attack at all in the south, which would be fine by us. Although they might then, make up for it by attacking up north, which would be, one way or another, the Germans are going to try and find some way to bring the pain. So, any way we can find to deny them that is a good thing. Those units will go there. They'll sit tight in Kharkov. Our tank steps are now kind of a precious commodity, so I think we want to get them in back behind the line. 1, 2, 3. 1, half, 2. We want to get that unit to a city, so we'll be able to combine it. 1, half, 2.5. That's fine. Those units will probably just sit in Kursk later. All right, that is it for operational movement. We'll stay put in there for now. No, let's do that. Maybe we should just play it safe. We'll put a couple steps in there. I mean, the Finns aren't going to attack with 4 factors attacking 3, 4 factors attacking 6. I'm not worried about that, but we should play it safe. Because what if the Germans do really well and that HQ has to either flee or gets vaporized? Then, suddenly maybe it's a different story. All right. That's it. There's no combat. Reserve movement. So this stack will head over to Rostov. Those units will go there. These units go there. Half, one, half. Now, it's a long way to go to attack anything, so I think we've done a good job of stymieing the German offensive just by not giving them anywhere to kill Red Army units. Here's a bit more of a concern because I think we still want to sit. Maybe we don't sit in front of Smolensk then. We can always just abandon Smolensk. The goal here is to take advantage of the terrain so that the Germans can't kill the Red Army too much. So maybe we just back away from Smolensk. This unit will go one. Kind of want it to be centrally placed so that it can go either sort of along here or down here. I mean, it's not really going to matter. So let's put it there. We do want to avoid getting outflanked. So maybe that goes there. That unit goes there. This unit is not in finished zones of control because that's an all C hex side. So we can go there. It feels a bit bad leaving Luga like that, but I think we need to do that. Maybe we also need to be concerned about this hex being empty because the Germans can just walk in there and maybe attack there. But again, they're slow. It's slow going. They don't have fast units and they're way far behind. So it's not happening anytime soon. That unit will go there. That unit goes there. Right, we're not really concerned about giving up Smolensk. Although that unit is not looking quite so hot there. Oh no, that unit is going back there. So maybe what we'll do is this unit will go here instead. That's 1, 2, 3, and then they're nice and tucked away safely. All right. We've got nice full stacks, nice full stacks, nice full stacks. The German ability to take pot shots has been stymied, we think, pretty easily, right? They're not going to get a good attack there. They're too far away now to attack those hexes. They're too far away to attack any of those. I like it. Sometimes you just have to run away. All right, so that's the Soviet reserve movement. Now they have their conditional events. So they have Lend-Lease followed by the event on the card. So Lend-Lease 4, which I'm pretty sure is an infantry step. Yes, it is. They get an infantry step, which they will place here. So they'll be able to build that unit up again. Actually, let's place a shock army infantry step because then later on we might have a good counterattack. So now they have 1 tank and 4 infantry steps from their card. So the tank will go here. 1 infantry step. 2. 3. 4. It's probably fine. All right. And that is a Soviet faction turn. So now we have delay rolls. Germans are hoping for a nice low delay roll on the Air Force and the logistics marker. It'd be nice to get some middling rolls for the Panzers, so that especially maybe they'll be both available by the winter. But they are definitely keen on a very low roll for the Air Force, so they would really love to have it come back for the summer, which is certainly possible. 50-50 shot right now. We'll just do top to bottom for these and then do the naval delay roll. So 4 dice. That's not what they wanted to see for the Air Force. 5 becomes 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 comes back in the mud. I guess I'll have it for the winter. Maybe that'll help. Maybe not. That's right away. This is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because it's 6 becomes 5. This is going to be 3 becomes 2. So it'll be available in the autumn. That's not too bad. They'll be able to put replacements right into Odessa. Naval delay. 5 becomes 4. 3, 4. Western delay rolls. We've got 5 main rolls, so we'll just roll those. 2, 4, 5. Again, there is a -1 DRM. So the Germans are especially unhappy with that bomber result. It is coming right away. This is a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This next one was a 4 and 6. They definitely rolled rather high on average. 4 becomes 3. 1, 2, 3. It's okay though with the bomber being so early. The HQ is a little bit of a problem potentially because they. I guess it'll be okay because that's going to be when they're playing Torch in the winter. It would have been nice to have it earlier though. Royal Navy delay. 3 becomes 2. 1, 2. And last but not least, the Soviets. They have a lot of delay rolls, so we'll just break it up. I think we'll just do the 4 guard armies first. 4 dice. 3, 6, 5, 3. No die roll modifier. 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. And we'll do the next 4. So the other 2 fancy armies plus staff logistics in the fort. 5, 5, 1, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 1, and 6. And then these last 2 delay rolls. 1 and 5. Well, having 2 HQs coming up next turn is definitely good, especially because oh no, that's the one we got from car 27, so it's just as good as all the others. It's not better. But what was that? It was a 5, I want to say. Yeah, 1 and 5. So 5 for the Air Force. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the Soviets are completely bereft of air cover for the rest of the summer. At least the Germans have that going for them. The Germans may be looking at siphoning units back from Norway after this whole situation. although it's a little hard for them because they don't have supply, so they can only ship one unit over during reserve movement. They won't be able to during operational movement because their units are not supplied. And a unit won't be able to leave Oslo because it's in a British ZOC during reserve movement. So, yeah. That could pose a problem for when the British bomber's ready. All right, well, let's put stuff into the force pool. Advance the turn marker, and we will organize our force pools. We have a lot of HQs now, eventually. It's coming along. We'll put that there because we don't have any other things there. We may end up using that. We'll see. All right, so that's going to go there. Actually, with the American Air Force, we're going to put the bombers sort of over a little further over here because I think we'll have interceptor and then Air Forces and bombers, so it's kind of organized. That's looking good. Scratch convoy. And where are we going to put that? I guess here? Where does this unit normally go? That normally lives there. So yeah, that's fine, I think, for the SS Panzers. We're not getting a whole lot of SS units unless we change our mind about playing SS Europa versus Festung Europa. Which, if it looks like we're going to, just with the units we have now, if it looks like we're going to stall out the Allies in Italy, like if they're not going to make their Italian timetable, that might actually work for us because of all the units we get. We'll start thinking about that now because all those units go into the force pool rather than the delay box. It is tempting, but it could be a trap to play SS Europa. The no retreat marker is normally how we make sure the Allies have our time winning the game. See, the other thing is if we can pick up 3 victory points and stall out the Western faction, that might means that could mean they don't make their timetable to beat our no retreat marker. If we can stall them out enough, maybe they don't beat the no retreat marker even if we get stuck at 2 VP as our high water mark. So we'll talk a bit more about that in the autumn season because this video is long enough at over 2 hours. Maybe a bit under 2 hours after we trim away some of the dead air, but probably not. So yeah, we'll talk a bit more about that in the autumn video because that's going to be a shorter video. That is the end of this video. It's a very long video. As you can see, the Total War summers are starting to get long, and they're not likely to get any shorter. Maybe they'll get shorter because next summer it'll be the Allies on the offensive, and they're just not going to have as much stuff. You know, the Germans probably aren't going to be on the attack. Maybe if they play Operation Citadel, they might have a limited offensive somewhere. But I think their offensive might actually stall out a bit just because the Soviets retreated. The Germans, I don't think they have an attack anywhere in particular next turn, so they'll be spinning their wheels for a whole summer turn, which feels pretty good for the Allies. That might actually make them go turn around and attack the Western faction just because they have, if they're spinning their wheels. Probably not, though, because of the Western Air Forces. They might have to, and they do have to think a bit about what they're going to do about the whole bomber situation, because if the British place that bomber on a hex. They get to flip it over to a devastation marker, which then counts against Germany. It doesn't count now, but it'll count at the end of the game, when it could, of course, really matter. So that's fine. They might just eat it, because if they get to 3 VP and they put the no retreat marker in the 3 VP marker, then they'll be a little bit ahead of the curve historically. And if the Western faction gets stalled out, they might end up falling behind on their strategic hex timetable, which means that even if the Soviets match their historical progress, the Axis faction could end up ahead. Historically, the Allied factions end up with 4 VP based on their victory point count. If the Axis manages to get to 3 VP and places the no retreat marker in the 3 VP box, the Allies have to get to 4 VP to win the game, and then if they don't, maybe because the Western faction falls behind, they lose. The Axis wins ties. So it's very tempting to play SS Europa, but I think the smart play will still be Festung Europa, and we'll talk about that more when we get into the autumn season turn. That is the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun playing through this summer. For me, even though I'm playing by myself. So we will see you next time. I hope you like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and have a good time.